Well, we're live on Facebook and we don't know what's going on Zoom. There we are. And if we hit that, we're big.
Hit the plus button.
So good morning, guys. Welcome to week, I don't know, what is this? Hello, Zephilina.
Week big.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Sam. Week 5, maybe, of quarantine, isolation, social distancing.
March 14th.
Mm-hmm.
March 13th.
All right. So we're very close up on my live.
Yes, we're very close up.
are.
Hi.
Weirdly close. Okay. We're perfect on Allen's and we're good on Zoom. Except Zoom is picking up half of the... Okay, here, we're going to just move things. Sorry, guys. We don't normally... There.
Wow. Well done. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
God, don't put you in that.
Well, I was trying to make...
All right, so just fiddling around here trying to get things right. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Yesterday was such a spectacular day. I couldn't believe that there wasn't a mark in the sky. There wasn't a cloud all day, and now I'm looking out the window here as it snows at the end of April. So in a quarantine, watching the snow out the window. Yuck. Yeah, crazy.
Zephilina, do you have snow there? No. You guys are already into your beautiful spring? Yeah.
So are we.
What's happening here.
Our spring is beautiful. It just has snow.
Yeah.
Right now.
All right. So we have decided that we would address something that we're noticing right now. In particular, a number of people that I spoke to and the blogs and things that I've been following. Sorry, guys, we're still arranging these.
Just waiting.
Is that people are frustrated. It's like, I don't know if it has to do with the weather here in Canada or it's just the amount of time that has passed, but I heard from many people and I felt it myself, just sort of like the novelty is over. So
the novelty.
Any of us that were actually enjoying, the introverts who were kind of excited about how this was working out, but also just the lack of connection and the lack of seeing our friends and everything else. People seem to reach a tipping point this weekend in my world anyway.
Yeah.
And so we thought we would address today. Al's going to do his opening like he always does. And we're going to then address the feeling of frustration and apathy, which we'll use some pretty cool tools to give you guys a way to maybe work through that.
Yeah, and we arrived there because in talking to people, there seems to be two sort of groups of people. There are people that are really getting a lot of traction in their life, doing things they want to do. And there are people who are just can't seem to get going, right? They have time, they have enough resources to do some things, but they just can't seem to get going. So those of you who are watching on Tara's Facebook live feed, she is maneuvering her camera.
Sorry,
and it's quite exciting. I'm getting seasick, Tara.
No, carry on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then there's some of us who want to do more, and we're getting frustrated. As Tara said, whether it's the amount of time that we're being constrained or the access to things that we are normally have access to instantly that we can't have access to. And there's these emotions emerging. So we want to talk about that. I'd like to start the same way we've started so many sessions with a review of that 3-step way of breaking emotional state and moving from a very negative emotional state into a positive emotional state. And a lot of the techniques in NLP actually cause emotional movement. They move us from one state to another. They move us from where we are to where we want to go. That's one of the purposes of the techniques within NLP is to create movement. And so I'm just hitting some hellos. You can wave over there. Yeah. So again, if we want to break an emotional state, a negative emotional state, we're into a negative kinesthetic or a negative emotion, and we want to move to a positive emotional state. Now, when we're in a negative emotional state, the submodalities or the modalities of visual, auditory, kinesthetic that we're focused on will probably be entirely kinesthetic inside our own mind. So we'll be thinking about thoughts that make us feel really bad. So to break that emotional state, one of the best ways to do it is to change the representation that the person's using. So if I'm feeling really bad and I'm inside my head feeling sad or angry or whatever negative emotion's overwhelming me, if I move into my visual representation, if I start looking and seeing, so we get the people to look up and imagine they can see their telephone number on a billboard. Now we ask people to see their numbers in color, and what color are the numbers and what color is the background, and they see their number now. So they move from their kinesthetic representational system into their visual representational system. And as they see that, then we ask them to engage their cognitive mind and read those numbers backwards, from the last number to the first. And those two steps, moving into the visual quadrant and then reading backwards, breaks the emotional state 100% of the time. And now while you have yourself looking up and seeing your telephone number, if you go into peripheral vision, meaning that you see everything to the left and right and up and down and in front of you without moving your head and eyes. So just stare at a point and see everything in front of you. And then, Tara likes to use her jazz hands up here so she can see them on either side of her head. And then as you do that, if you listen for all the sounds around you, I can actually hear the wind in the trees outside right now. I hear some murmuring kids outside the room. And as you do that, if you feel everything, the room temperature, clothes on your back, you're very, very present then, because you're seeing, hearing, and feeling in the moment. And as you do that, your heart rate will start to slow down and your respiration rate will drop, your breathing will drop from your chest and into your diaphragm. And if you just sit there for a moment and just stay present in the moment, totally calm, that's a beautiful sensation. So we've gone from a negative state, we broke that state, now we're totally calm. If we fire our resource anchor, that place where you installed positive resources, a trigger point, if you hold that for 2 or 3 seconds and you feel a positive emotion come over you, now you've made the transition. And the more times you do that, that pattern just becomes part of your pattern or behavior. It'll start happening automatically. So those are the steps. Break state, go into peripheral vision, fire your resource anchor sequentially. The other thing I'm encouraging actively is to find a breathing technique that works for you. I mentioned J.K. Rowling had an article out about her time with COVID-19. She was tested positive. She embraced a breathing technique that's being used in a hospital in England to help her overcome her COVID. She claims it was pivotal. The doctor, you can see that. So if you just Google J.K. Rowling's and COVID-19, you can see that video. I'm advocating for Wim Hof's breathing techniques. It's one of the most researched breathing techniques, but you can find one. And the breathing techniques like Wim Hof's and the one that J.K. Rowling talks about actually stimulate your immune system. And I think in these times with a virus around there that's nasty, I'd rather have a healthy, vibrant immune system than an immune system that's gone to sleep. So I really encourage you to do the Wim Hof breathing method. You can see it on YouTube. You just Google Wim Hof breathing. The best of his breathing techniques, when you see them, are on YouTube. It's 11 minutes and 2 seconds long. So you'll recognize it by that. And then the last thing, and we'll come back to this on this session because it's really, really important, is motion creates emotion. And when we're constrained, when we're sequestered in our house, maybe we have our favorite corner that we're spending a lot of time in. And maybe that's a corner that has, some negative emotions have snuck into that corner with you now. So when you're feeling negative, move, get up and move, get some blood flow going, get some oxygen moving. And motion changes our emotional state. My friend Jeffrey Lane, that was one of his favorite sayings as a public speaker trainer. Motion creates emotion. So get on the move. All right. I'm not frustrated anymore. Yeah. I think I can go.
Okay, so we said we were going to speak about frustration, and I tagged on apathy because I know that it's a common side effect of frustration. So often when people come in and see us and they're presenting problem, what they would, first indicate to us is the thing that's stopping them from getting them where they need to be is like a lack of motivation or an apathy or something along those lines. And usually it doesn't take us too long to sort of back it up a little bit and recognize where they're frustrated. So it can be a frustration with the self. probably most commonly, it ends up being a real frustration with your own self. Sometimes, though, it's a frustration with external things, right? Other people, society, some sort of, religion or some structure that we need to abide by or feel as though we need to abide by. Whatever it is, it's a frustration that you don't recognize it for what it is, and therefore it starts manifesting into sort of different ways of getting in your way. So
I describe frustration as we have expectations, and when our expectations aren't met, and it could be an expectation even just to understand. Like in these times, right, we might have an expectation that people should be giving us enough information in a way that we can understand. And we're getting frustrated because we don't understand, right? Or you come home and you have expectations about the way the house will be, and they're not that way, so you get frustrated, right?
Or the way your kids should behave.
Or the way they should go to bed. Or all the shoulds.
Yep.
Maybe frustration's directly tied to shoulds.
Yeah.
Huh.
But there's also just frustration with... as an emotion that you recognize really, really well. So there's frustration that kind of disguises itself, has a decal. And then there's also frustration that is absolute pure frustration. You know it, you feel it, you express it as frustration. You hear yourself using common ways of expressing it. And it's funny, we used to, when we trained people, we would tell people to think about a minor emotion for some techniques when we just introduce them. So the very first time that we do, say, a core transformation or whatever, we say to people, pick a minor emotion to work with, like frustration or irritation. And we stopped doing that in a hurry because we realized that for some people it's true. Frustration is minor.
Huge.
Yeah, for other people it's massive. It's almost, the direct trigger to like rage or something. So as we do this, we are actually going to do a technique with you at the end. And we're going to encourage you to come back to this maybe and do it on your own time. And we will ask you to do it with something like frustration. Just pay attention to what that means for you. So when we talk about frustration, Alan has spoken about Lisa Feldman Barrett, who talks about how we anticipate the emotions we feel, and then we react to that anticipated emotion with the emotion itself, as opposed to something happening and it causing us to have an emotion. That there's sort of there's a split second there of anticipation where our mind already predicts how we're going to feel and how we're going to react. And when you can interfere at that point, when you can recognize that process happening, whether you're doing it in a coaching session and actually going through an official process or technique, or just on your own mindfulness, recognize it actually, once you realize what you're looking for, ask yourself the question, what did I predict feeling, as opposed to what did I feel, like it was in the past tense, right? And then blaming the trigger. Instead, ask yourself, did I actually, potentially, not potentially, you did, but were you able to notice that you anticipated it before you even felt it? Yeah. And that can often interrupt.
The fact that our emotions are a prediction, our brain is predicting how we should respond when we encounter the trigger. So when a person gets frustrated at a particular experience, and some of us get frustrated at the same experience repetitively over time. So if that's happening, your brain's actually predicting that when you encounter that stimulus, you will feel the emotion of frustration. If you can catch that and understand what is it that's actually not being fulfilled by when you encounter the trigger, because the frustration is a resultant, right? Yeah. It's your brain predicting, when I see the trigger or experience the trigger, I'm going to be frustrated. And what maybe you should ask yourself is, what need is not met in me just before I felt frustrated?
So I'm going to give you a little metaphor to understand this in a different way. So our body has a pretty perfect design. So I would say, by any standard, the fact that we can operate this machine that is like, more neuroconnections in our brain than there are like stars in a galaxy or something. When you think about the fact that all of this is happening within our bodies. And for us, we actually, we often get into a place where we question the purpose of things. We question, like, why do I react wrongly to something, right? I'm clearly having a wrong reaction, or I'm clearly having a wrong emotion. And then we kind of berate ourselves for that, and we get pissed off at ourselves, right? We get pissed off at our body for reacting a certain way. Like, why do I... we had a client who would always go bright red when she was speaking, even though she wasn't nervous or, didn't consciously feel that way. She would get like all pissed off at her body for having this reaction, right? Yeah. So we end up with all of these conflicts where we think our body is doing something wrong. But in reality, when you do slow things down, your body has a perfect way, almost always, of creating emotion and responses and reactions in order for you to take action in a perfect way. So if you take just a very, very simple function, when you need water, so when the machine that you're driving here is lacking water, we have this absolute perfect response where the body says, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make you feel thirsty. And that thirst will then therefore drive you to go, realize like, water. Hey, I need some water. Go get a glass of water, go drink it, right? So it's a perfect, when your body needs food, it makes you feel hungry. When your body needs attention, it may, cause you to respond a certain way. But what happens if you don't have a glass of water? So say you're like out in the desert or something and you don't have access to that water, or you're in a situation. You're going to continue to feel thirsty. Your body is going to keep doing this like, hey man, you need water, you need water, you need water. And it's going to make your thirst grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. But what happens if you ignore this for long enough? So because your body doesn't know whether you're in a desert or whether you're in a, surrounded by water, it just knows what it needs. And so if it doesn't get that, so if after, a day or two, or I'm not sure specifically how long, but there is a certain time when dehydration, like an illness, will take over, right? And when that happens, those of you who know about severe dehydration, the body stops feeling thirsty in the way that we're familiar with it, and you start to get sick. When people describe the type of dehydration they've experienced when they're, lost or whatever, it turns into a headache, it turns into an actual sickness, like your body goes into a place that's different. And so if somebody comes up to you in that moment and says, hey man, there's a water hole 2 miles from here. If you in that moment check in with yourself and say, okay, what do I feel like doing right now?
I doubt that you'll feel like jumping up and running for 2 miles to the water hole. You may be overwhelmed with a sense of apathy and perhaps giving up.
And if you lay down, and if you do what you think you're listening to your body to do, you're going to lay down and you're going to die.
I can't go on.
Don't do that. Instead, what you've got to do is you've got to bypass. So this is one of these circumstances where your body was originally, a while ago, it was telling you what you need had you been able to hear it then. But right now, you need to set that aside and say, this emotion right now, this feeling, this emotion, this state, this desire, whatever, this is not actually addressing what I really need. And so you got to sort of like shove that aside and ask yourself, here's where you use your conscious, your awareness, and you say, what do I actually need right now? What is it that I don't have that I need? And the answer is water. And so you've got to go beyond what you actually feel like, walk that 2 miles. And then when you get there, the beautiful thing is that when you get there and you start drinking that water slowly, your body is going to get what it needs and it's going to feel better again. It's going to start to feel energetic and healthy again.
The apathy, any frustration you experience will start dissipating.
Right? And so I use that analogy because it works really well with those of you that may be familiar with the feelings of like depression or the feelings of, as we say, frustration or apathy or any of those things, because frustration or apathy can actually manifest into something much bigger, right? We know this. We see it day in and day out with our clients where it may have started out as frustration, but then it turns into something else. And so I would encourage you that if you're feeling things like apathy, and we know the definition of apathy is just kind of not giving a crap about anything, right? Like,
is that the formal definition?
I think so.
This is the Webster's, not giving a crap about anything.
This is when it seems too big, it's too looming, it's too large to think about what you might want to do to set yourself up for a better future, a better tomorrow, a better, next year or next week or whatever. And instead you give in to this feeling of just like, it's too frustrating, it's too, and you sit down on your couch and you watch Netflix. Not that that's a bad thing, by the way. I think it's a perfect thing to sit down and watch Netflix sometimes. But if it seems to be overwhelming you, if it seems to be happening and in your gut, you're responding to your like immediate feeling of I just don't want to do anything, I want to do this.
I'm so frustrated and I'm so angry, I'm just going to sit down and watch Netflix.
Or if you're avoiding something, if you're moving away from, I would suggest to you to do something that we're going to do one of the many techniques you could do. But it's to stop yourself, and instead of letting yourself kind of dwell in that feeling, say to yourself, what is it that I need right now? What do I need that I don't have? Ignore the feelings. This is a time when I would say ignore emotions. Emotions are just meant for action. So just ignore the emotions. Ask yourself what the need is. And I would say to you, like I felt this weekend, I felt an enormous frustration with just like, okay, I've had enough. Like I want to see my friends. I want to go have a coffee. I want to I want to go out. Like it was just that sense of like enough is enough. And so I could stay there, which wouldn't do me very good. Or when I go into the need, if I want to let go of that frustration, go into like, what is it that I need? And what I need is like stimulation. I need change. I need some kind of certainty. Like I need to know sort of like, what are we doing? We're no longer in this like, oh, this is only a little while. Like I need to sort some stuff out, and I need connection with my friends. Like I need to, and so when I move into those needs and say, okay, what am I actually going to do to address the needs? It's like getting the water. It's like then, I set up with like friends, I'm going to have, online coffee dates, and the stimulation that I need is to get myself all organized in my schoolwork. I'm working on a big program right now, so I can, so addressing the actual needs. And even though I didn't feel like doing it, truly, I was ready to like curl up and just watch Netflix for the next, however long I could, which would have like felt better. But when I addressed the need is when I actually felt better.
And as Tara's partner, watching Saturday go through the day and watch Tara sort of wind herself up in frustration, and then the frustration goes to, well, there's nothing I can do about it, this moderately apathetic, and then watching her afterwards, after she has this mini party with, I guess there were 7 or 8 of your friends on there, and they, I came upstairs to serve wine at this end of the party, and everybody's laughing and full of joy, and afterwards Tara got off the phone, and the transformation in the emotional state from pre to post, because she had actually addressed her needs.
I didn't feel like going on this call, by the way. You guys can probably share this feeling with me. I would have actually been like super excited if they had called and said like, you know what, didn't work out, Tara, we're canceling the whole thing, and then I would have been able to just like crawl under and like watch 3 more episodes. Like I was kind of hoping for that. She
really wanted to cocoon. She really wanted to feel sorry for herself, right? And that opportunity to connect with friends and to have that moment of stimulation, of variety, of connection. It was beautiful, and again, as her partner, witnessing this, had I gone to her beforehand, though, and said to Tara, you saw that, I would have got the quick signal to back the F off. And so we really, really encourage you that when you're feeling these emotions right now, move past the emotion and ask, what is it that I really, really need? What need is being unfulfilled?
And there's probably more than one, but pick one.
Yeah.
Pick one. The other thing I did was just get like everything organized for my school. I printed everything I need. I did it so that I no longer had that frustrating feeling of like, I've only got 15 minutes, so I can't really do anything because I have to log on and do all this. Instead, I was able to get organized, so I can use those times now. So let's go into the technique, yeah?
Yeah. So as Tara said, there's a bunch of techniques that we can use to help us move through frustration. To be fair, the one we started the session with, where you break state and then go to a positive emotional state, works really clearly. The other thing is sometimes on an emotion like frustration, the degree to which we're emoting is inappropriate for the stimulus. So our expression of the frustration is far bigger than the stimulus, the thing we're frustrated over. And so, I don't know, which one of the exercises would you like to do? We have a list in front of us. We haven't picked yet.
I think we should do the anxiety model, actually.
Oh, so cool.
Like do the future.
Right
on.
So,
guys, here's what I think we should do.
Yeah.
Let's warn you ahead of time. On Thursday on this call, we will actually do a timeline release as a group. So on Thursday, if you are watching this live or if you're watching it before Thursday, think of a negative emotion like frustration or fear or worry or whatever. And we'll actually just take that time rather than speaking to a certain issue. We'll just use that time. We'll describe how to do timeline and we'll walk you through the process so that you can come online and have us actually guide you through a timeline release. But it'll take 20 minutes to do that. So
that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah. And if you guys
on Facebook Live doing timeline therapy.
Yeah.
Too cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So today what we'll do is that future.
Yeah. So all of us, our memory, our unconscious mind stores all memories and it stores them temporally, according to time. Now, some of us store our past behind us. Some of us store our past to our left and some of us to our right. It doesn't matter where your past is. If I could see all of you and I asked you to point, if I asked you to remember something in your past and point to the direction that it was in, I might imagine that you'd point to your left or your right, behind you or in front of you. So it doesn't really matter. And then if I asked you to think about an upcoming birthday or an upcoming event in the future and point to it, you would point in a different direction. So, if you're at home and not in the car, so if you're in the car, do not do this exercise. If you're in the car, turn on the radio. But if you're at home and you're sitting comfortably, just close your eyes for a minute. Just close your eyes and just allow all the muscles around your eyes to relax. And just notice your breathing. I'm getting a note. What's that word?
Addressing. Do it on addressing.
Yeah.
Imagine addressing.
So I want you to imagine, as you sit there, addressing a particular need that you have that you're finding frustrating to address in our social distancing, in our sequestering. So think about a need that you're having a challenge meeting, personal need. And it may be creating some apathy in you, some lethargy, or frustration. So just think about that. And think about being able to address it. And think about being able to address it in a reasonable time frame. All right? So as you think about addressing that need,
come up with something specific, a very specific way to address that need.
So in the example Tara had, that was to connect with friends, to get some variety, to get some stimulation. So, some very core needs in a human being. So think about a need you want to address that you're having a challenge addressing. And then I want you to just imagine and addressing that need, much in the same way Tara addressed her needs on Saturday night with her friends. So come up with a way of addressing that need. Just allow your unconscious mind to come up with a specific way for you to address that need.
One thing that you could do today or tomorrow that'll be addressing that specific need.
Okay, and as you find that way, as you have that way, I want you to float up in the air above your timeline. So just imagine you're floating above your timeline.
Get into a hot air balloon or put wings on, some way that you can float up above.
Or you could float as if sounds in the wind, or you could float as if you're in water. However you float is unique to you. But float up above your timeline. And then I want you to float out into the future to 15 minutes past successfully meeting your needs, having your needs fulfilled, addressing your needs. So float out into the future to 15 minutes past addressing your needs. And while you're out there, just stay there for a moment. You're 15 minutes past having successfully met your needs. Turn and look back towards now. And just notice how all and any adverse feelings wash away. And you feel a far greater sense of wholeness or completeness because one or more of your needs have been met. And then when you're ready, and only when you're ready, I want you to float back to now, however you floated out there, and float back down into the room, your room, and open your eyes. Now that's an exercise that meets so many levels of scientific criteria that we could have another 1 hour special just on why that technique works so well. But it's certainly, if you, and I'm a real fan, and so is Tara, of Lisa Feldman Barrett, you're now helping your brain predict that you can have your needs met by doing a specific activity. So when you do that activity, so yeah, there you go. So when you do that activity and you actually get there, your brain predicts and experiences having your needs met. And the next time you feel your needs may not be getting met, your brain starts predicting that, oh yeah, we can have them met. And over time, like all great change, the more you do this, the more you take the discipline and do this, float out to 15 minutes past the successful completion of anything, your brain starts predicting success. It starts predicting stable, calm emotion states, and life just gets richer and fuller. Say, that's 12:30 right on the nose. Yeah. Bam, we're good. Thank you guys for joining us. There was a lot of action on the 2 Facebooks and a lot of action on the Zoom meeting. Thank you guys so much.
Just send us questions. We will answer them all week long, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, let's make that admin at inspiredoutcomes.ca. Send your questions to admin at inspiredoutcomes.ca. We'll address any of them. And if you have questions while we're on, just put them in the chat on Zoom or in Facebook. Again, have a great couple days. We'll see you Thursday at noon.